Hello, it's Mike Madge from sailjuice.com again, and we're going to be starting a series where we're going to be looking at how to get your DN up to speed going around the race course, and we're going to be looking at different aspects of that. And we're lucky enough today to have 3 times world champion from North America, Matt Struble, with us. Matt, arguably one of the better starters in the fleet, and he's going to be with us today talking about some of his techniques, tactics, and strategy to get you off to a perfect start when you're racing your DN. Hello, Matt, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, great. Appreciate joining you here today and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Well, just for some of the viewers out there, I mean, this goes worldwide. So some of the viewers out there haven't probably even seen a DN race, or they're showing up to a DN race for the first time and they have no idea how it's going to start. So maybe if you could just describe what is the main differences or the obvious differences between the start of a DN race or any ice boating race for that matter, as opposed to a soft water race.
Yeah, it's a little bit different configuration and setup. Of course, we're racing around a windward-leeward course, typically about a mile or so in length. And the starting line, instead of a rolling starting line on a time clock countdown, we're pre-positioned on the starting line, perpendicular to the wind direction. So it, typically in a, gold fleet, A fleet class, there'd be 50, 55 boats in one start, and they'd be split into 2. So half the boats on port tack, starting at just to leeward mark, and half the boats on starboard tack. And it's primarily based on your finish from the previous race. So on the right side, starboard side on port tack, you would have 1, 3, 5, and so on. And then on starboard tack on the port side of the course, you would have 2, 4, 6. And they're separated out by a couple of boat lengths horizontally and lined up literally on a cable laying on the ice. So it keeps everybody in a nice straight line.
Yeah. Now you said, but your starts are usually dictated by your finish, but obviously the first start is a draw, is it not?
That's right. Yeah, it's a random placement for the first start of the first race. That's right.
So I guess, like, having been to a few DN events myself, there's a lot of anxiety that goes into that draw. I mean, a lot of people, there again in sailing, it's one of the uncontrollables. Unlike with a soft water start where you have the, position, you do all your homework, you figure out which side of the course you go to. It must be a little unnerving when you go to that score sheet and look up your number for the first draw where you're situated.
Yeah, it's a little bit apprehensive for sure, but it is what it is. And like any sailboat race, you need to be confident in yourself and your equipment, and that wherever you're going to start, you can manage the race course and the race itself. So it's part of the game. The other thing that plays into that's much different than softwater sailing or traditional sailing starts is once the regatta goes on and the races are placed, your race finishes are placing you on the starting line, you're always starting next to the best people in the fleet. So that's kind of an interesting difference to summer sailing as well.
Yeah. Now, maybe even before we get into the technique involved with start, when you show up to a start line, say your first race, I know myself, the first race I went to, I had windbreaker on, sweatpants, running shoes, obviously not the way to show up to a DN start. What is some of the gear that you need that is essential to get you off the line starting fast?
Yep. Number one is you need, a helmet for safety. We're going fast and banging into the boom and these kinds of things. So helmet. It keeps you safe, keeps you warm, a set of goggles, but then there's no moving on the ice unless you're wearing track shoes. So a really good set of spikes, track shoes that have a little bit of room for some, extra socks in there. And then it's the difference to what most people interpret or think about, sailboat racing in the winter on frozen lakes is that you're actually not wearing a lot of clothes. Aerodynamics, these boats, they go upwind at 45 knots, and it's windage is a big deal. So we typically wear like a thin wetsuit, essentially a warm water dive suit, or a luge or a bobsled suit. There's some real specialty materials for these kinds of applications now, and then thin layer of long underwear, essentially. So it's about a 2 or 3 layer, pretty thin total stack up, because you need good mobility for off the starting line. You're running, and then good movement and low aero drag once you're in the boat.
So I brought a few props with me. So just when people are thinking of track shoes, I mean, we're thinking, something similar to this, where you've got the spikes. More important probably to have them at the front.
That's right.
And again, something like Matt mentioned, that they want to be a little bit more, bigger, so you can get a bigger pair of shoes. You can get your feet in there with some extra socks in there. The other thing I thought would be important to mention also is the tiller arrangement. Now, most all the racers have what you tell a telescopic tiller, and something like this, where you got the ability to collapse the tiller. What's the importance of that, Matt? What are we looking at for that?
Yeah, it's really driven by the geometry of boat configuration. So an ice boat, a DN specifically, has a front steering runner right on the bow of the hull, and then there's a runner plank near the rear of the boat with it's 8 feet long with a runner blade on each end of it. So it's like a triangle configuration. So that means to gain riding moment, you don't necessarily go out the side of the boat, but it's a angle, derived from the leeward runner on the runner plank to the front runner on the bow. So it's really an angle, or out the rear of the boat is how we hike. So with that, since we're steering with the front runner and the tiller is in front of us, we need a telescopic tiller so that we can expand it out when we're hiking or running off the starting line. But then when we need to move our weight forward to reduce riding moment, we can then slide the tiller forward. So it's, partially function of the geometry of the boat, and then of course ergonomics for the person sailing.
Yeah. Now, the other major difference, again, and I compare soft water to hard water sailing. Soft water, you'll notice before the start, in the last 5-minute sequence, people staring up the course, looking where the pressure is on the course. Probably not as easy to do with ice boating.
That's right. Yeah, you're not seeing the wind on the water. Of course, if there's a little bit of light snow on the ice, you can see that and read that to a certain degree. But it's always an interesting comment to me, because even in when I'm softwater sailing, I'm looking at the land features, the clouds, the sky, these kinds of things. And with ice boating, that part is no different at all. So the evaluation, very high level picture of the race course is the same summer or winter or soft or hard water sailing. But you're right, the immediate right before you, the dark water or light water is definitely removed. So it adds another element of difficulty for sure.
So I would imagine that it's even places more premium of importance on doing your pre-race homework, getting out on the course, sailing the course, trying to figure out what the favorite side is.
It is, yeah, because what comes into play with that for us for race management, for strategically racing the boat around the race course, is the conditions of the race course. So, we have wind, of course, but then instead of sea state, we have ice state. So it could be pressure ridges, maybe a little bit more snow on one side than the other. Different situations that definitely play a huge role in the race of ice boat.
All right, so I've got a video here of you, Matt, starting, and I'd appreciate maybe if we can go through this video, and we'll stop it at certain points. You could tell us what's going through your head, how you got the boat set up. Okay, so there you are lined up. I believe this is from it's right there, the 2016 North American DN qualifier. Maybe you could walk us through, what position are you in here? What block are you in?
I'm not positive actually back in 2016, but I was up near the top, maybe position 4 or something. I had a good draw, lucky draw for the qualifier here for this regatta.
And here we're looking at the line that you talked about that's set perpendicular to the wind, and you're setting up. So here it looks like, well, maybe you could talk us through us here. You're rocking the boat back and forth. And
yeah. Typically, I try to just make sure the boat's freed up. You know, it has steel blades, and so just make sure that there's, you know, it's not freezing into the ice, no snow, you know, picking up on the runner blades. Obviously, ice boat racing is all about low drag. So just, you know, getting the boat prepped. And one thing you notice here that I see an error with a lot of people is, you know, I've got my shoulders down nice and low. The tiller, my left hand on the tiller and my right hand on the shroud are fore and aft, about at the same you know, dimension, with the side stay depressed a little bit, or you know, flexed from pushing on it. And you know, low weight distribution so that you can get as much power as you can to the ice.
Yeah, if we can compare you, and not to pick on anybody else in the course, but obviously a lot more athletic look to your posture than as we go down the line and look at some of the other competitors. So you're ready, and everybody's focused ahead. What are they all focusing on here?
Yeah, there's the starting sequence is driven by the race committee that's just leeward of the leeward mark. And they have a flag system that they use. And so everyone's eyes are bearing down on the starter, and the flag is probably up right now, raised, since I'm in a, you know, a aggressive stance ready to run, and waiting for that flag to drop, in which case signifies the start of the race.
And what dictates, like if you're looking down the line here, like your sheet tension here, is that dictated by the how much wind pressure it is, or is that your standard setup for almost any wind?
Yeah, that's a great question. This particular race, if I recall, was pretty good breeze. It was maybe 12, 13, 14 knots of breeze, and obviously very clear ice, no snow on the surface, and pretty fast ice. It was cold out, so the ice was good and hard. So with that configuration, what I'm doing is setting my boat up, my rig, so that about a front third of the mainsail is backwinded. So if you were to bear the boat off to leeward, it would want to sail. But the thing with an ice boat is it starts to generate so much power so quickly as you accelerate that it would become overpowered. So you want to set it up not head to wind, but not far off, so that it gives you good control, little oscillations of the wind angle before the start, so that you can run, give a good push. If you think about it, if you're just off head to wind, about a third of the mainsail left, when your first couple of pushes running, you're going straight upwind virtually. So excellent VMG. And at the same time, it's developing room from your boat to the boat to leeward of you. So now, as you accelerate and get in the boat, you have some room to operate, just like any good start. But in this scenario, with this wind strength, main sheet just snug. If the wind was lighter, I may have slightly more main sheet tension in the rig. And if it was windier yet, maybe just slightly eased. But this is a scenario I'm trying to add twist to the mainsail, to the leech, so that the power distribution is down nice and low, and it gives me lots of control, because in this case, it'll be no problem getting up to full speed.
Excellent. So let's play this ahead a little and take a look at you taking off here. There's flag down. So I imagine, just like a bobsledder or sprinter, those first few steps are really important.
Yeah, one other thing I'd point out with my technique is that on the starting line, while the flag is still up before the start in preparation, my feet fore and aft are very close together. And what this allows me to do is use the power from both legs for that initial push. A DN is, fully rigged roughly 135 pounds or so. And so you have to accelerate that from 0 up to your, top running speed of, maybe 15 miles an hour or so. So I like to have both feet in a position where I can really use the full muscle strength of both legs to get that initial movement in the boat forward, because that's the hardest part. Most people focus on the latter part of it because you see the result of a good technique or a good start, but it really starts right on the starting line or in the blocks, if you will.
Now, just looking down the line, like we've already got the person to leeward of you here already getting in the boat, obviously a couple people getting in the boat. Would you say they're probably getting in the boat a little too soon?
Yeah, again, it probably goes back to their initial setup. So if you set up with the boat too laid off and power in the rig, that a couple of steps, the boat is overpowered. And so you need to get in the boat immediately to gain control. But if you set up to where you're closer head to wind or about a third of the mainsail luffing back, now I can take a 2, 3, 4 steps and then begin to bear away and allow the boat to accelerate. And also notice that with the main sheet slightly eased, all the twist in the mainsail. So I have lots and lots of control. The boat's not trying to sail away from me. It's accelerating smoothly and under control.
And is it like head down pushing, or you focused still on the sail or the wind or the other sailors?
The initial push, my first initial push plus 3 steps is head down, everything I've got. And on that 4th step, eyeballs come up, look through the window of the sail to leeward, make sure that someone below me is not running above head to wind, for example, and I'm just going to plow right into them. So at about the 4th step, you really got to get your eyeballs up and look around and make sure, you're operating in a safe and efficient way.
Okay, let's carry this through. Now, I'm just noticing at the end there, just before you're getting into the boat, the bobsled type, or the sled type kick.
Yeah, it's you can only run so fast, obviously, and so you want to run up to full speed. It's a real timing of events in that you want to accelerate straight out of the blocks, begin to bear away, bring yourself up to your maximum running speed. And at that point, you need to step on the plank and enter into the hull to sail. Well, while you're doing that, 1 foot on the plank, 1 final kick, which can be just a mild acceleration to boat speed, and then you transition into the hull and begin really, sailing and pressing the boat.
And you can almost see, I don't know if it's clear to you, but the track of your skate, the upwind, and then the bear away type effect at the end. So here you're just starting to foot away from the wind so you can get into that final speed mode.
Yeah, at this point, I've developed a really nice gap to leeward of me. I have lots of room. I can go anywhere I want. I've now transitioned body weight onto the plank, so I'm gaining riding moment. So now I can bear away relatively aggressively and bring the boat up to speed. So as I get into the hull, start to trim the sail and mast starts to bend, I'm very aggressively going for maximum boat speed because that gives me options tactically.
And if we play this through just a few more seconds, we'll see what are we here. We're 10 seconds, 15 seconds into the race, not even, and already you've established a good lead.
Yeah, I think a good example here is this image. So the boat that started to windward of me is almost dead behind me. So that technique of running virtually straight upwind, maximum VMG, and then the aggressive bear away, and then getting in the boat and sailing has yielded 2 things. One thing is put me in a strong position to windward, but also has given me the room to accelerate. So now I'm fast forward and I'm high.
Wow. And off to what seemingly would probably be, if I imagine you got a first place in that race.
I did. It was a good race. This was a qualifier race for the North American Championships, and it was definitely a start of good things that continued on that week.
So just before we finish with the topic here of starting, obviously what would you suggest to an average guy who's coming out, he wants to get his starts better? Well, what are some tips to help him improve his start?
Yeah, I think a couple of fundamentals, and to me, I mean, I've studied this a lot, and I've had great interest. I mean, us as humans, we only have, the abilities that we have. And so I want to make sure the technique is good. So no matter what your physical abilities are, I think if you clean up the technical side of setup, there's always something to be gained. So a couple of things there, I think, is setting the boat angle up properly on the starting line. So not too high to where the full sail is luffing, where you're carrying the full aero drag of the rig, but not too laid off to where the boat is trying to leap away from you or losing control. So finding that sweet spot, I find about a third of the mainsail luffing is about the right reference. And then the other part that I see really a big error is that people have their tiller length adjusted wrong in comparison to where their hand is on the side stay, the shroud, so that then they're running sideways effectively. One hand is way in front of the other, which then your shoulders are twisted, and obviously trying to run sideways is much more difficult than if you're nice and square and with your hip square, shoulder square, and pushing forward. So I think those couple of items, and keeping your body weight low initially, also just gives you a much better advantage just mechanically getting off the starting line.
And I'd imagine, fitness, some type of fitness training, biking, running, sprinting would also help, even practicing with pushing your boat when there's no wind.
Yeah, I've enjoyed running around. I mean, in college, I ran track and field and was a pole vaulter in college and track and field. So I've always been into some form of training when it comes to running and sprinting specifically. But, I think there's some simple things you can do with just, squats and things you can do at home, in the comfort of your home. Obviously, there's much more aggressive things you can do at a gym. But I think the point is that doing any type of movement to increase, especially your quads strength, that's really your initial push. And then, embracing running, on lighter days or whatever, and we're playing around on the ice. I mean, it doesn't bother me at all to go for essentially a jog, push the boat around. So it just helps work out those kinks in the mechanics. And of course, just physically as well. But I do a lot of cycling as well, a little bit of weight training. But I think really the focus should be proper technique on the starting line is the biggest return on investment there is.
And maybe just one last question. Now, we looked at you had pretty much the perfect start there, I would say. For the average guy that, is just getting into the class, maybe not such a perfect start. He finds himself with somebody to leeward of him pinching. What sort of recovery? What are you looking at to recover from a situation where you got not such a perfect start and you want to get yourself into clear air?
Yeah, this is a tough area. So my focus is always to win the start and then not have to deal with these problems. But occasionally they do occur. And one problem immediately, the first reaction is you want to put the bow down and just sail underneath the guy. But in ice boat racing, there's another 25 boats or whatever below them on that same line. So at that point, I'm really looking around, head out of the boat and looking for opportunities where I can tack away, clear myself, because in ice boat racing, it's split second decision, and any time wasted going slow, your competitors are sailing away from you. So it's something you really have to have your eyes out of the boat and be willing to tack away, maybe when it doesn't even seem so obvious or as your first reaction.